We can use a practice that restores behaviours or that restores relationship. It's called restorative because it's not just sweeping things under the rug. It is about understanding what happened, how you were feeling, what was said, what that meant to you.
In a world where young people are being told so much that they're wrong or what they're doing is wrong, or if they put their hand up, if they do something that's different, they're wrong. If we can celebrate these small wins in our classrooms, we can get incredible results of young people feeling really confident in who they are.
When our young people have a strong relationship with us, they've got trust with us, they are way more likely to approach us with a difficult conversation, to let us know if they're struggling, to ask for help. And the better we know them, the better, even if they don't come forward, that we can also identify when they may be struggling and support them in seeking that help.
Podclass acknowledges the true and traditional custodians of the land we meet on here today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respect to elders past and present and are grateful to be on this country.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you
When the students start to riot,
I'll be here for you.
even if your coffee's gone cold,
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello and welcome back to Podclass. This is the one about youth mental health, part 2.
Part 2.
Part 2, we're here. Part 1 is the previous episode. We are...
What else would it be?
Well,
We are, deep breath as Amanda remembers who we are.
we are Podclass. You are joined by your hosts, Will Masara. Will is founder and CEO of Youth Leadership Academy Australia. And Skye and myself are founders of Youth Engagement Project. And we're here to continue a conversation that we started in the previous episode. Thanks for reminding me.
Nice.
So if you have joined us here and you haven't yet listened to the previous episode, feel free to go ahead and head back there. And if you have, then welcome. We are happy to be with you.
Welcome back. Last time we kind of started to unpack some of the recent data that's just emerged. There was a big commission done. So the Lancet Psychiatry Commission on Youth Mental Health has taken place. And essentially it was a global commission. So it looked at youth mental health globally and some of the trends, the mega trends.
Right then, we're Miss Wawad.
Yeah, well, we won't get people involved in this episode. That'll be good for no one's mental health. What we know is that youth mental health is something that is detrimental to their well-being moving forward into their adult lives. And what we're seeing is that the onset of mental health is starting for prime age at 15 years old. So we're really looking at practical strategies that we as educators can use to support the mental wealth of our students. Because I know, and we spoke about it last episode, it can feel really daunting to feel maybe responsible for looking after the mental health of the students in our classroom. And it is in no means entirely our responsibility, but there are some things within our control that we can do to help support those young people.
And as we shared last time, we are by no means health professionals as teachers. However, we do spend a lot of quality time with our students. And so let's look at our practice. And for many of us, a lot of these things, we're probably like, oh, tick, nailing that in my space. It's just a reminder that through our practice, we can nurture and provide early intervention for mental ill health. And that's what we're here for.
Let's recap quickly what we went through the last episode. Number 1, foster a supportive classroom environment.
Number 2, incorporate social and emotional learning in our spaces.
Number 3, recognise those early signs of mental health issues maybe starting to arise.
And number 4, promote a balanced approach to the classroom and their education.
And we are up to number 5, which is collaborate with school mental health resources. So what we know is that whether we work at a school or whether we work at a youth organisation, we have resources at our fingertips. That is a fact. We have access to not only learning tools, but to quite possibly health professionals, maybe even on campus, maybe even multiple health professionals on campus. And so what we can do is we can really nurture and guide our young people to understand the mental health support that exists in our school, B, utilize it and implement it in our classroom, and C, encourage help-seeking behaviour if it is needed.
And I really think it's important to, again, mention this is about early intervention. You're like, but my classroom doesn't need it. But how can we embrace it into the classroom? As like, I love the analogy of mental health and physical health are the same. You still need to work out when you're the fittest you've ever been, right? And that's what we can do by making our young people aware of the resources that are available.
And I think normalising that there's, it's reducing that stigma around help seeking as much as we can. And the more that we highlight and emphasise the benefits of working with the resources that we have or people that we have access to, it can make a really big difference. Like I remember when I was teaching and coming out the back of COVID, like many people, I was really struggling to kind of recalibrate and get back to normal. And I went and had the 6 free mental health sessions that you can get. We're lucky in Australia that we can access those if we want to. And I remember after going to my first session and just speaking to someone who wasn't, immediately known to me, just felt really amazing. I felt so much lighter. I remember coming to school, it was on a Friday afternoon that I had my appointment, and coming to school on a Monday, my students were like, "Oh, Miss Hughes, you're in a great mood. Like, how was your weekend?" And I was like, "Oh, it was awesome. Friday night, I went and saw, and I had a meeting with my psychologist, and it was just so lovely to talk about everything that's going on in my world. And then I had a great weekend." And I shared about what happened on the weekend, obviously very appropriately. But then the student, what they grasped onto, or the thing that held onto, was like, "Oh, what happened on Friday?" And I said, "Oh, I just went and, had a chat, and it was just great to talk to someone and get a few things off my chest." And that afternoon, one of the students that was in that group that was talking to me came and found me in my office. I was working as a coordinator at the time, and they came and found me in my office and said, "Oh, how do I speak to someone like that? I would really like to do the same thing." And I don't know, like that was a student who I had not identified that anything was necessarily out of place or going on for them on a surface level, but clearly something resonated. And just by normalising that, seeking help and having that
normalisation gives them permission to do so as well.
Yeah. I also feel like, if we kind of have a mindset of let's wait for noticeable changes in behaviours, well, we're possibly getting to a much more acute state by then. Like, looking after our well-being, regulating our system is a factor. And I think on this point, let's totally debunk the whole concept of, well, we need to drink some concrete and harden up. Like, no.
Oh, mate.
No.
Hasn't worked.
Absolutely not. It hasn't worked. It's not working.
Well, let's have a look at the youth mental health report. We literally have proof that we need actual strategies and support in place.
Yeah.
This attitude of it'll all just be fine isn't actually working.
So point number 5 is around highlighting and sharing and, modelling if necessary and if appropriate, the resources available to us in the school community so that our young people know what they are, know who they are, know how to access them. And even, we start implementing some of those, whatever we're learning from the school counsellor or from the, mental health resource in our school, maybe even implementing that in a daily or weekly practice as well.
I would just love to add, because I think it'd be remiss for us to move on without saying it, that it is, if you are a school that has access to people on site and that are available to you, that's a real privilege. Not every single school has that ability. What we do have, though, is there's a lot of community organisations that can support school in terms of resourcing and upskilling, and also the online community. I know that we say, kind of avoiding being too much wrapped up in social media, but there's some great resources that we can access for free that have really great examples and tools and posters and things that we can share with our students when and if appropriate and if they need it.
Yeah. And so before we move on, if you're unsure of where to go or who to go to or how to seek help or even just learn more, please talk to someone you trust in your school community, because whether it is there and present and really, obvious, or whether it is something that is a service that's provided through the, education system or an online resource, someone in your school will know that information.
Yeah.
And so if we're not sure, let's ask and let's talk about it, because we deserve it and our students deserve it.
100%.
That's number 5.
Number
5.
6.
Which we kind of touched on, but probably needs its own point as well. Exactly what we said before. It's like modelling our own mental health, modelling and looking after our own mental health, and showing that with our students gives them permission to do the same.
Yeah.
Because not we can make the assumption that they're not getting that same permission at home.
Absolutely.
So true.
And so how do we do this? Well, I mean, our own practice and acknowledging that, yes, what we're unpacking here is youth mental health statistics, but mental health statistics and mental ill health statistics across the board are declining. And so, you know, we've unpacked on other episodes the state of and how educators are feeling at the moment. So where are we at and what are our strategies for our own mental health? And even if we're feeling like our glass is just, you know, at 80% or 70%, how are we filling that cup? And what are we doing for ourselves? And if we feel comfortable, if it feels appropriate, how are we sharing that respectfully with our students to share that it's really normal to, you know, maybe it's that on the weekend, I just really needed a break from screens and I just really needed a break from noise and being overstimulated.
Friday afternoon, I literally said, me and my laptop, I have 24 hours off. I shared it in like one of the very early episodes and I said, me and my laptop need 24 hours. It's going slow.
We're on a break.
There's too many tabs open, which means there's too many tabs open in my brain as well.
Yes. Yeah. And so what did you do? Did you go for a walk? Did you listen to some music? Did you, you know, call a parent or a friend, or what was it that you did? Or did you do a meditation? Like what did you do for yourself? And as I said, if you're comfortable to, like, share that with your students.
Yeah.
And what did you do for yourself on the weekend? Let's normalize that. And
also with your colleagues, like I have a teacher group chat, you know, shout out to my little teacher group chat, but we hold each other accountable to that stuff as well. So on a Friday, we might send a message or someone will send a message saying, hey team, my plan is tomorrow morning I'm going to spend from 9 till 12 and smash out this bit of marking or planning or whatever it is I have to do. And then I'm not picking up another thing. I'm not opening my laptop for the rest of the weekend until I'm back at school on a Monday. And just being able to hold one another accountable to that is really important for our mental health and well-being, because when we're going through it together, we have this shared experience. There's something really in that, because we know that feeling of isolation and no one else really understands or gets it can also contribute to mental ill health. So knowing that we are a collective and we're united is really important.
Probably the final point on this one is like the acknowledgement that sometimes you will have to do work. And sometimes like it's not one of these things where you can just close the laptop and have like, yes, I no longer work on weekends or after school, because regardless of what job you're in, it's probably not that luxurious. I know it's not in our world. Just quietly.
Yeah.
And that was point 6. Look after your own mental health too, please.
Point 7 is around implementing restorative practices. And, you know, we're all going to be familiar with restorative practices. And this is like when we have, maybe it's behavior management challenges, maybe something goes down amongst students, something happens that, you know, is challenging for a student or multiple students. That can be, you know, if we don't handle that in a way that repairs the situation, that can be really challenging for the mental health of the students involved. So I think we have a responsibility to understand a, you know, strategy for restorative practices. And I'm sure, you know, each of our schools has a different way of approaching this. But when we can use a practice that restores behaviors or that restores relationship, you know, and it's called restorative because it's not just sweeping things under the rug. It is about understanding what happened, how you were feeling, what was said, what that meant to you. And it is about ensuring that our young people are feeling heard, are feeling seen, because through that process, they are processing their own emotions. And that's, you know, that is the opposite to sweeping under the rug. That is being present to it and processing it in the moment. And then we're making it better with whoever else was involved. We're not making it, you know, bigger, we're making it better. And that's the whole point of restorative practices. And what it actually, I mean, in my experience as an educator, so often what restorative practices allows us to do is actually have what seems like quite a conflict go down and end the process with stronger relationships and a stronger sense of understanding amongst those young people. And I think, you know, a part of this is navigating difficult conversations, and we've got a future episode coming around navigating difficult conversations, because that's a whole other element. But just if something goes down and it is a bit of a, you know, it is a bit of a challenging situation, and we have two sides of a coin, and, you know, they're coming from different places, this is how we can resolve and sometimes even strengthen, rather than letting it fester and maybe contributing to some really challenging thoughts or some really challenging feelings for our young people.
Yeah, nice. So number 8.
Flexible learning options. Now, we're not saying, oh, mate, Jeffrey, we're now working with Jeffrey, can submit the assignment.
It's always J's. It's been Jimmy, Jerry, now it's Jeffrey.
Part 1, we had Jerry. Part 2, we have Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey, it's not about giving Jeffrey all the freedom in the world. It's about giving him that autonomy piece and also having that piece of compassion that sometimes our young people, most of the time, are going to be starting at different points.
Yeah.
And they're going to need to get to different points, and we're going to have to support them with that. And that's going to look like sometimes we're going to have to give an extension. Sometimes we're going to have more compassion. Sometimes we are going to have to provide more support.
And acknowledging, I think, that the student and their well-being always comes before the curriculum or a due date or whatever it is, because that's what matters.
Yeah.
And them moments is when you build really solid relationships of like, I care more about your health and your mental health than the grade of this assignment, and I will back you up to leadership if they question me about it as well.
Absolutely. And I would love to just add that it's really important as educators, and we know this, but I always think it's an important reminder. Like sometimes, like especially if you teach in secondary school, our students can look older than they actually are in terms of their development. And so
yes, that
we
would
can
be
have so we can have these kind of assumptions around where they should be, or how they should know how to self-regulate, or be aware of all of these strategies.
Or you're in year 9, you should know how to process your emotions by now.
We kind of assume, because so much of this conditioning and learning happens in those really fundamental foundational years of growing up from, infant through to primary school. And we don't have control over what happens in that space, in that student's life. So we also kind of assume their knowledge and their circumstances. So being really empathetic, being really curious as well, and then coming from that place when we are adapting and we are personalising learning to meet their needs.
And I think, what you always share, Skye, is in those circumstances, why questions rarely go down well.
Yeah.
Why are you being this way? Why are you acting this way? Why have you responded this way? It's so loaded versus we encourage what questions. So what's happening here? Or what's going on in this moment? Or what do you what do you
or even
experiencing?
how can I support you?
Yeah, absolutely.
That kind of thing makes a really big difference. Why can feel like a really big cognitive load, and like you said, can be loaded. So yeah.
Point number 8, flexible learning environments. We're not trees. Move along.
Also one of Will's favourite sayings. Yes. You're not a tree. If you don't like where you are, just move.
Yeah. Move.
On to number 9, and it is celebrating the small wins. There's a lot of really interesting data we've been reading around acknowledging effort, over achievement, because it encourages our young people to step out and to continue to make effort. And, I feel like for me, every effort is worth acknowledging.
Yeah, 100%.
Like if we're putting time and energy into something and we are seen and heard for that effort, then that's compounding. And that also is where we can build relationship with our students.
It's also my brain going, dopamine, ding, 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 ding. That felt really good. So I would love to do that again. So I'm going to continue to put in that effort and continue to move forward.
In a world where young people are being told so much that they're wrong, or what they're doing is wrong, or if they put their hand up, if they do something that's different, they're wrong. If we can celebrate these small wins in our classrooms, we can get incredible results of young people feeling really confident in who they are as well.
Yes, yeah. And it's also a wonderful way to support shifting behaviours too. When we're acknowledging effort in our students, they're feeling so appreciated. And that also, goes hand in hand with positive reinforcement as well, which is, once again, teaching 101, but these are just those reminders of all of these practices that we put in place are contributing to early intervention and a supportive environment for positive mental health.
We'll fly through these next few just because we've kind of touched on them already. But number 10 is encouraging healthy digital habits. We kind of
you're saying I can't use my laptop at night time?
No. You went on a 24-hour break with your laptop, and that's important. We know that encouraging healthy digital habits is really just about using language and being really supportive in the way that we're doing that with students. It's not saying that you can't do something, because it's that choice piece. And also really focusing on the positives of having a break and of having really healthy, social media hygiene and those kind of things. things. And we can model that ourselves. We can talk about it. We can promote it. We can teach explicitly on it.
You can gamify it, create challenges.
Exactly right, as much as we can.
Yeah.
The next one was supporting developmental needs. So number 11 was supporting developmental needs, which we spoke to. So not making any assumptions around where a young person is at, but really just meeting them where they are and supporting them developmentally. So knowing that age and stage, appropriate stories, things that we can use with them.
And I think that's not just about, I guess, assuming a young person should be, ahead of where they are, but it's also about, if we're a secondary teacher, not treating our senior secondary students like they're in primary school as well. Knowing where they're at, knowing their level of, cognitive, that they're cognizant to the what's going on in the world. And, they have like a lot of,
We're exposed to so much. We're seeing it, we're hearing it, and we know exactly how you're talking to us if you're talking down to us.
This is so funny. I've literally had students that I've met for the first time, like a class for the first time, and I'm a secondary teacher by trade. I've taught in primary settings, but secondary teacher. And at the end of the lesson, I've had students ask me, "Are you a primary teacher?" And I'm like, "Oh, why is that?" And it was like, it might have been a group of year 7s or a group of year 8 students, because my over-enthusiasm and whatever was just felt to them very primary. And it was their first experience of being in a high school setting, and they expected to be treated as being like more grown up or more mature. But it's some of the best feedback that I got. It wasn't like they weren't annoyed about it, or they didn't find it like condescending. That wasn't the vibe. It was more that curiosity of that, and that thing. So, but it was fantastic feedback for me to go, oh, wow, if that's how I'm coming across, even if that's not my intention, how do I dial that back and be more supportive of what they would like to see in this space?
Because especially they want to feel like they're mature. It's like, how do you meet that level of like still keeping it engaging? I know like I spoke at an event the other day, and they were expecting me to go behind the leg turn because it was like an adult event. And I was like, please do not give me a leg turn. Please give me a handheld mic so I can go for walkabouts.
And so number 11 is supporting developmental needs. And really, when it comes down to it, that's just meeting our young people where they're at, getting curious about where they're at, and not making assumptions.
Number 12, build strong relationships. And you know what I highly recommend? Go and watch our last episodes. But honestly, like, we know that trust piece is so important. We know that compassion piece is so important, and listening to our young people and what they're actually saying, and listening. I love the quotes, like listening to respond rather than to understand.
Absolutely. And we also know that, and we're talking about the broader kind of scope of these 2 episodes has really been about this new and emerging mental health data that we've got. And what we know is that when our young people have a strong relationship with us, they've got trust with us, they are way more likely to approach us with a difficult conversation, to let us know if they're struggling, to ask for help. And the better we know them, the better, even if they don't come forward, that we can also identify when they may be struggling and support them in seeking that help. So that all comes down to relationship.
Yeah. So number 12 is nurturing strong relationships. So what we've done across these 2 episodes is we've unpacked 12 strategies that we can apply in our classrooms, that we can apply with ourselves, that we can apply with our students. These are not to add workload. These are to nurture simple strategies that act as early intervention for supporting positive mental health, but also being aware and educating our students about where they can get help and how they can regulate and how they can be present to what they need, and also how they can have needs and how they can ask for help with those needs and meet those needs, and they are deserving and worthy of that, as are you.
As always, thank you so much for A, for tuning in to Podclass, but B, for just being the incredible supports for our young people out there. We need
half
teachers.
of Gen Z, thank you.
Yeah, half of Gen Z. I can't say that. As the millennial teaching cohort, no, we are really just, so grateful for the work that you do every day in classrooms and in other learning spaces with our youth. And thank you so much for helping to support their mental wealth.
We are Podclass. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you then.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.